Hi, today I'm going to tell you a little bit about GRC, Governance, Risk and Compliance Framework, why organizations need it, and how to implement it in Jira. Governance, Risk and Compliance Framework is a top-down strategic framework ensuring organizations not only manage risks effectively, but also align them with strategic objectives and regulatory requirements. GRC is about protecting your business and enabling growth. Without GRC, companies face siloed decision-making, hidden risks, and costly surprises, whether that may be an audit that fails, a data breach that happens, or a product recall. Regulators today are not just recommending GRC, they are expecting it from organizations. And without it, a lot of times the consequences could be quite severe. There could be warning letters, fines, or losing trust of your customers. GRC is very often seen as something large organizations should have. But actually, a lot of organizations could benefit from it because it provides a competitive advantage to your organization. There are 7 situations that are quite common in everyday life of most organizations that you could benefit from implementing a GRC or improving the existing GRC that is in place. So let's walk through 7 symptoms that are there. First one, the symptom that spreadsheets everywhere. So you have a lot of risk registers, you have compliance checklists, but they are scattered all around Excel sheets and documentation folders without any clear oversight of them. You cannot track ownership of risks, your updates are constantly getting lost, and audits turn into fire drills. The second symptom is actually all about audits. So last-minute audit panic, as it is known. Your team scrambled to collect evidence right before an audit or inspection shows that compliance isn't integrated into your daily workflows. And GRC would help there because it is a proactive way of looking into your risks and collecting evidence. Third symptom is policy blind spots. Your employees aren't sure of whether policy is current, which version is outdated, if training records are incomplete, and this is a sign of weak governance and creates real compliance risks. Fourth symptom is siloed risk management. It means that IT is managing cybersecurity risks in one place. Your QA tracks quality risks in another system. Your operations have their own risk list somewhere, but leadership has no consolidated view. And this fragmentation leaves a company blind to cross-functional risks, and that is really dangerous. Symptom number 5, you have repeated incidents of the same type of issues constantly happening: security breaches, quality defects, missed deadlines. And the reason for this is that your risks aren't being systematically identified, tracked, or mitigated. Symptom number 6 is what is called compliance theater. When compliance feels like a box-ticking exercise instead of integrated into your daily workflows, for example, your documents are signed, but they're never read, your risk controls exist, but only on the paper. So this means that GRC is treated as an afterthought than an actual framework. And the last one that speaks to a lot of people probably is that leadership asks for visibility and you cannot deliver it. For example, if your manager asks you about the current top 5 risks that the organization might have, and it takes you days, if not weeks, to find that information, that is a very strong signal that a GRC isn't functioning as it should be. So all in all, if your company feels constantly firefighting and struggling to connect governance, risk, and compliance tasks into one single view, that's probably a signal that it's time to either implement GRC or strengthen the existing one. Most companies who have GRC today are still doing a lot of that through spreadsheets or siloed tools. And this approach is not really working anymore because it creates blind spots and slows down your team. What you should do is integrating GRC into the workflow or the tools that your teams are already collaborating on every day. And this is why we are focusing on how to implement GRC into Jira and Confluence. And there are some apps that would help you. For example, the SoftComply Risk Manager Plus app, where you can embed risk assessment, track your compliance and governance activities. So you don't need any more spreadsheets or scrambling before audits. But let's walk through the steps of setting up and implementing a GRC program with the help of a real-world example. We have a company. Let's call it Pharma Global, and it's operating, as the name implies, in the pharmaceutical sector and has multiple factories over 4 countries. Their challenge was that they had disconnected risk registers, siloed audit practices, and no consolidated visibility into operational, IT, and compliance risks. Their regulatory complexity was constantly rising, and with increased inspections and cyber threats, they felt that they should improve their quality, implement better cybersecurity controls, and lower regulatory risks across their various sites while maintaining site-level accountability but also enabling real-time risk oversight at the executive level. In other words, they felt that they needed a centralized governance, risk and compliance framework to get there. Now, Pharma Global implemented a robust GRC framework following these steps. So first, they defined their GRC scope. They started by clarifying the scope, which in their case was an enterprise-wide initiative, as opposed to a specific business unit, a key process-specific one. They wanted to harmonize their operations across all the different sites. The other thing they did very early on was to establish boundaries. They introduced the compliance goals and organizational policies. For example, to have a common risk taxonomy across all different sites for their supply chain, to improve their data integrity, to increase product quality, and have better regulatory compliance. They also specified that they needed to harmonize policies for 22301, 27001, and GXP policies across the different facilities. The step number 2 was to appoint GRC stewards. Pharma Global assembled a cross-functional GRC steering committee, including people from compliance, IT, operations, quality, and executive leadership, to ensure that top management commitment was there. Each committee member had decision-making authority, as well as the ability to use necessary resources when it comes to managing risks in their area. Additionally, each factory had their own GRC lead assigned to it, who coordinated local risk programs and compliance reporting to the GRC steering committee. The steering committee was also put in charge of conducting privacy audits and facilitating organization-level risk dashboards. Step number 3 was to map governance objectives and compliance requirements. In this step, they identified all relevant compliance requirements, including the GXP, GDPR 22301, and 27001, that they needed to comply with. In step number 3, they also specified that all document control and training processes are to be moved to Confluence-based QMS to standardize operational and quality management across regions. They established an integrated audit calendar that covers GMP, cybersecurity, business continuity, and health and safety review dates. Each factory was regularly performing a business impact analysis and risk assessment that was aligned to ISO 22301. They agreed that risk scores and mitigation plans were to be tracked in Jira with a risk management app like the SoftComply Risk Manager Plus, and that each deviation and CAPA that was logged into Jira was also linked to Global Compliance Dashboard. They agreed that audit logs were continuously to be tracked and compliance metrics regularly reviewed, and all relevant information was to be maintained in real-time oversight dashboards. In step number 4, they conducted risk identification across domains. So Pharma Global realized the importance of implementing GRC to their daily workflows, and as such, they implemented GRC to Jira with the help of the SoftComply Risk Manager Plus app. Here you see lesson tools that would help every step of the way. So for the first 3 steps, where you have a lot of planning and assigning roles and responsibilities, you can use Confluence Cloud for documentation, policy, descriptions, and you can use SoftComply Document Manager that allows you to always stay on top of which one is the last approved document and which ones are outdated. For project management, Jira itself is great. For aligning your risks to goals, you can use goals inside Jira. And for risk management, the SoftComply Risk Manager Plus app on Jira Cloud would help you to do all that, both on strategic level as well as on a lower level and product level risks. For evaluating performance and improving the GRC, you can again use both Jira and Confluence Cloud with SoftComply Document Manager, Risk Manager Plus, Risk Manager for Confluence for reporting, and SoftComply Static Snapshots for baselining. Now that you know which tools to use for different steps in GRC, let's jump back to the risk management and step number 4 in Pharma Global for risk identification across different domains. So step number 4, Pharma Global realized the importance of implementing GRC to their daily workflows, and as such, they implemented GRC to Jira with the help of SoftComply Risk Manager Plus to conduct risk identification across different domains. They started with risk identification from multiple angles, and they created a select list to categorize the different types of risks that they were aiming to manage. So they would have a comprehensive risk catalog using sources like self-assessment, incidents, analytics, stakeholder interview, and regulatory updates inside the Risk Manager Plus spreadsheet view. And you could categorize risk categories in this workable table view for risks. So you have financial risk, strategic risk, operational, security, third party, and reputational risks. And for that, you can have custom fields in Jira and select lists inside the table that allow you to easily navigate, filter, and sort results afterwards as well. Step 5 is about assessing the risk impact and aligning the risks to strategic objectives. Pharma Global conducted the risk assessment first as if there were no controls in place as the starting point, and as a result, they would get something that we call the inherent risk. So they evaluated the inherent impact and likelihood of each risk to get the inherent risk class. Another thing that they did was when using Risk Manager Plus inside Jira, you can define your risk iterations. So how many times are you assessing a risk? After each regular review, for example, an annual review, Pharma Global added the next review date so that they would have that information already available inside their workable risk table view. So what they did was that they created columns for annual review date and the impact and likelihood and risk score for that annual review. So they had the inherent risk, and then after mitigation, they could have the annual review risk assessment again. So this was the step number 5. Step number 6 is all about analyzing root causes of each risk. So in here, Pharma Global has defined root causes for each risk. And again, it is a select list where you have policy shortcomings, ineffective controls, system weaknesses, or cultural issues to understand the underlying causes for high impact risks. These predefined lists for root cause categories help harmonize data across the entire organization. Based on the impact and likelihood of risk, the risk score for each risk is automatically generated in the Risk Manager Plus based on the organization's risk appetite that is determined in the heat map. Step number 7 is about prioritizing the risks to understand the compliance efforts to manage these risks. So based on the impact and likelihood, the risk score for each risk is automatically generated based on the organization's risk appetite that is determined in the heat map. Let's look into this heat map that Pharma Global built for themselves. In the Risk Manager Plus on Jira Cloud, Pharma Global customized their risk model where they determine the risk appetite in the heat map. In the Risk Manager Plus, you have 2 main views. You have the risk table view, where we are at the moment, and risk model view. And in here, Pharma Global built their own 5x5 risk matrix, which is one of the more common matrix layouts. And they provided clear guidance for their teams by entering the description for each risk characteristic, both for impact and likelihood for their risk managers to be able to pick from. What they did also was that they provided very clear actions for their teams for risks in each risk class or category, so that the team would know what exactly should they do once the risk is determined to be on any of the risk levels. Step 8, developing and implementing mitigation actions. And for that, we are going back to the Risk Manager Plus table view, where we can see all the high priority risks that the teams designed robust interventions to. And this is a mitigation summary and linked mitigation actions that we are looking at. For all high risks, there needs to be mitigation action in place to lower that risk. Something that strengthens the internal controls or some policy enforcements. There could be governance mechanisms rolled out, policies that need to be updated, and so on and so forth. But what is the really cool thing here is that you can add tasks to your team members that need to take actions for lowering that particular risk. This is done by Jira linked issues, and the team made sure to have clear accountability and timelines for each action that help mitigate risks. In Jira, they utilized custom fields to enter free text into the mitigation summary column and tasks relevant to assigned owners and due dates, and tasks were then linked to risks using Jira issue links. All right, step number 9 is all about monitoring residual risk and compliance effectiveness after implementing risk controls, residual risk levels, and compliance status that were reassessed in the Pharma Global. The team in Pharma Global defined the frequency of reviewing their risks. They made sure that they have a calendar. So they added the annual review date, and they did that with a custom date picker field inside Jira, so that the annual review time is the 13th of August this year. And as one of the goals of Pharma Global was to keep detailed records, policies, risk registers all in one place, they decided to use Confluence across their sites and control the documents with the SoftComply Document Manager app. With this app in Confluence, they were keeping their policies and records in one place close to Jira. It has automated approvals, workflows, version control, electronic signatures available inside Confluence. In addition, Pharma Global wanted to make sure that the executive level is always aware of the high risks across their organization and across their sites. And this is something that they were able to do with quick filters inside Risk Manager Plus app. In here, we have a filter global, so you can see all the global risks that are there. But if you choose, for example, the factory one, you will be able to see only the factory one risks in here. For example, you have 2 high risks and 1 critical that have not yet been reassessed. As a result of implementing the GRC framework, the Pharma Global reported the following outcomes. 1 year after their implementation, they claim that they have audit readiness increased by 100% across all their sites. The CAPA closing time was reduced 40%. The cross-site collaboration has significantly improved, and especially when talking about sharing mitigation strategies and audit preparation checklists. If you want to learn more about how to do GRC in Jira with the help of SoftComply apps, please let us know. I would be happy to have a one-on-one demo with you. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.